Hey everyone, it's Konrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and best-selling international author of Australian Real Estate Investing Made Simple. Welcome to today's video, and I hope you had a good break. I know I have. I've drank a lot of alcohol, a lot of Coronas. I've been floating in the pool pretty much the whole summer, and watching UFC and boxing and reading a few books and researching the property market and checking out CoreLogic information and reading the fin review and talking to investors and catching up with developers for lunches and various parties. And it's interesting because the main topic that everyone's talking about is what's going to happen to interest rates this year, and from all different perspectives. But also one of the biggest things that and when I go back to the office, I rang a bunch of my clients, and I'm catching up with people now in my St Kilda office, with investors that are buying the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th property. And a lot of them have these questions of, should we wait to buy property or should we buy property and wait? Are interest rates going to go up, down, or sideways this year? And that's exactly what I'm going to unpack in today's videos. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and welcome to today's video about, should you buy real estate now or wait until interest rates fall? And that's a very important question because it has a lot to do with timing of the market versus time in the market. So I'm going to unpack this, and I'm going to give it to you from a very practical perspective, because a lot of people don't even know what questions to ask. And I think the most important question is to ask, are interest rates going to go up or down? But what does it really mean to you as an investor? Deep down, what does it mean in terms of cash flow analysis, tax, dollars per week, income and outlay? So I'm going to cover that in extreme detail. I'm going to actually give you a comparison of different properties at different interest rates, 3.5% interest only, 6.5 and 7.5, and show you the long-term implications of buying property or sitting back and waiting for the interest rates to come down. And I think a lot of you guys, especially those who are just starting out and building their portfolio, this will be a very interesting video for you, because I think you'll be surprised with some of the conclusions at the very end. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee or a power drink, and welcome to today's video. Before I get started, a bit of a disclaimer. Obviously, I've never met you. I'm not sure I'm not aware of your financial standing and circumstances. So obviously everything today is purely for educational purposes only. Before you do act on anything, please seek independent financial advice from someone that's qualified, not only on paper, but they're actually getting the results that you want, which is the key thing. Let's talk timing and interest rates, which is a big topic, because if you were lucky enough to attend some of my live events back a few years ago, Stephen McClutchy and myself were telling people to lock in interest rates at 2.85, 2.9 for 5 years. And I was educating people on how you can actually get interest rates locked in for 10, even 15 years in Australia. That's right, 15 years if you go through private banking or the wholesale lending division of various institutions. And we had a list of those institutions. And we're basically telling people, guys, this is it. It's the bottom of the market. The bank swap rate was 0.1%. It can't get lower. As I said to everyone, it's not going to get to zero. And some commentators are saying it's going to get to zero. It would never get to zero. I used to work for NAB. I know what the motivation is. NAB needs to make money, guys. They're not in the business of giving out money for free. They're not a charity. So they're being in breach of their directorship responsibilities and duties. But beyond that, a lot of my clients locked in interest rates for 5 and 10 years, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. In fact, the amount of champagne, alcohol, and cognac that I got delivered to my office the year after and the year after, when the interest rates went up to, bank swap rate went up to 4.5%, which means variable rates were around 6.5%. I mean, those people would have ended up spending on average 10, 15, 20 grand per year on their same property. So I want to thank you guys for dropping off all that alcohol in my office. It's like people think because I'm Polish, I'm an alcoholic or something. Like I actually don't drink that much, but I like an occasional drink, but especially on the holidays. But during the week, I pretty much train at the gym 5 days a week. So I eat very clean. I don't actually have any kind of alcohol, even wine with my dinner. My wife's Italian. She has wine all the time with dinner, not too much, but just one glass. But personally, myself, if you're into powerlifting and different sports, you end up eating very clean, which is really good. Enough about me. Oh, no, wait, there's more of me. So obviously, for those who've never heard me speak before, I've got a YouTube channel. I'm also a real estate agent, a mortgage broker. I used to be in financial planning, working for Australian New Funds Management and various other companies. The most important thing, guys, is that I'm a property investor with a multi-million-dollar property portfolio here in Melbourne. And the things that I'm giving you in these videos and this channel is designed to give you real on the ground information about what investors, developers, and some of the smartest thinkers, if you like, and most successful investors are thinking right now in terms of what's happening in the market and what are the implications, the economic implications, and more specifically, the implications to your portfolio and your bottom line when it comes to interest rates. So I'm not a theorist, guys. I'm not a broke academic. I'm an investor that's doing the same thing that you want to do, which is build up a large property portfolio, which I already have, and that has given me an amazing lifestyle. And I live here in Melbourne in a beautiful bayside home, close to the beach. Life couldn't be better. By the way, I want to really thank you guys for supporting my book. That's made #1 multiple times on various platforms, including Amazon, which is probably the most important one now, let's face it. So I can see that my book's been #1. At the same time, my finance book has been #8. By the way, if you want to ever learn how to reduce your mortgage and do a mortgage reduction program, definitely get a copy of Australian Property Finance Made Simple, because the biggest thing in that book is teaches clients how to reduce their mortgage in record time rather than spending 30 years working for the bank and paying the equivalent of your value of your home in interest over the lifetime of that loan. If you can reduce your time of your loan by 10 or 15 years, you're going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest repayments to the bank. So definitely encourage you guys to buy that. So here's some other examples of #1 and #1 for both books. So really thank you for buying those books. Also, if you want to get a copy, jump onto realestateMadeSimple.com.au or bookonfinance.com.au. Get the book hard copy, plus you get the online course as well, valued $497. Enough of that shameless plug. Let's talk inflation. Before we talk about interest rates, we've got to talk about inflation, because this is really the reason why we are here economically. The most important thing, and I'm not here to teach you economics, by the way. I love economics. When I was at CBC St Kilda, I had a really good economics teacher. But I can tell you now, this channel is not made to teach you economics, and I'm not an economics specialist, but I need to unpack this topic because it is so relevant to interest rates. So the whole thing is that the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia's whole target range for inflation, and this is headline inflation, which is inflation that has taken out the volatility of fuel, is between 2 and 3%. That's their target, that's the range, that's the ideal setting. And when inflation goes beyond that, higher or lower, the only thing the RBA can do is to implement a monetary policy, which means that they affect the bank swap rate on the overnight money markets. Every bank in Australia has to settle their accounts every night, and they do that by buying and selling money on the overnight money markets. And that interest rates is actually set by the Reserve Bank of Australia. But there is no legal requirement for banks to follow what the RBA does. That there's almost like a gentleman's agreement, but there's no legislation that specifies that if the RBA increases, interest rates by 50 basis points, NAB and CBA have to increase all variable loans by 50 basis points, and they just fix rates as well. It's just been done that way for a long time. Honestly, the reality is that banks love to increase interest rates because then they make more money, and the middle management get all those big bonus checks. So it's a good excuse to also just justify the exorbitant cost of interest rates. But really, the banks could definitely shave 1 or 2% of the interest rates if they wanted to. But let's face it, why would they want to? The whole purpose of a bank is to make money for its shareholders, to pay dividends. And number 2 is so those middle managers can get the bonus checks so they can buy the 911 turbo Porsche, or the GT Nissan or Mercedes GDS, whatever you're into. Now, we've had massive inflationary pressures since the Labor government has come into power, because the Labor government, all they do is spend other people's money, and then they blame the previous government for doing that. So if you look at headline inflation, and headline inflation, once again, is just inflation without fuel and volatility. So it's kind of like the underlying real inflation that's been cleansed. You can see there that it's gone up really high in December 22 to 8%. And then trimmed mean is the actual average over a period of time. So it was unacceptable levels, completely unacceptable. And that's why we had 13 interest increases across the board in various banks. And obviously people got caught, with the pants down in a way, because a lot of people weren't ready for it. And not only has inflation created an increase in virtually everything, insurance products, obviously household goods, food, accommodation, petrol's gone through the roof. I mean, it hit you on every aspect. Health insurance, various insurance premiums, even car insurance, home and contents insurance. I mean, everything got affected. So suddenly you're paying more for your mortgage and you're paying more just to live and function as a family. And this has been detrimental to Australia in terms of lifestyle. I mean, a lot of people in the lower middle class got completely smashed. The middle class really struggled. And I guess only the rich people were kind of unaffected, or people that had no mortgages. The irony was, and this is what no one talked about, was one of the reasons why it got so high was because a lot of there's 4 million baby boomers, roughly 4.2 baby boomers in Australia. We've got 27 million people in the country, and a lot of them don't have any mortgages, right? So really, whatever the monetary policy is of the day that's implemented by the Reserve Bank of Australia, they really don't care because they've got their mortgages. It's young people collectively that have the highest group of mortgages. And so what baby boomers do is obviously a lot of them have very conservative investment strategies, being from the era, just in terms of psychology. They don't like volatility. So a lot of them have term deposits. And obviously the higher the interest rates, the higher the term deposits are paying. So term deposits went from 2.5%, 2% up to 6-7%. So suddenly, instead of on every 100,000, instead of making $2,000, they're making $7,000, $8,000. And so what they decide to do is go for holidays and start buying stuff they don't need. Now, you can't argue with that, because if someone's worked 50 years, they've raised 3 children, and they've paid off their house, and they've done everything right, what right do you have to say, guys, don't spend any money? We know you're 65 and retired, but you don't want to go on those holidays. Don't buy new clothing. Don't buy new cars. You got to kind of sit back, because the younger people will be affected negatively. I mean, you can't do anything. You don't blame them. When you've worked hard all your life, contributed taxes to Australia, raised children, paid off your house, you deserve to blow your money and invest it and get the highest possible yield. So the biggest reason why it took so long for inflation to come down was because there was a big group of people in Australia who weren't impacted by monetary policy at all, which is the baby boomers. And we keep coming to blaming the baby boomers for everything. They're holding on to those houses and not letting go. They're cashed up. They're going on holidays. They're spending money. They're buying new cars. Good on them. They deserve it. That's the reality of life. And there's nothing anyone can say to change their minds. What are you going to say to someone that's worked their ass off all their life? The good thing is now, with the various monetary policies tightening, we have a good forecasting that really inflation is going to come down to that between 2 and 3%, as you can see there, by 25, 26. No one's got a crystal ball. And I can tell you now, if you line up 100 different economists back to back, they'll give you a different answer. Most of them will be wrong. We're just speculating. But the question is it important to get it right? And the answer is no, it's not. That's the reality. And I'll show you why. Now, if you look at the inflation numbers, and we're looking at June 24, 3.8%, December 24, 2.6, then June 25, 2.5, December 25, 3.7, and went up a little bit. And then we have the projections there of, 3.1 and 2.5. So we're heading in the right direction. The only thing is, the reality is that we need those quarterly numbers to come out. And really, the RBA needs to have at least 6 months of consistent inflation between 2 and 3% before they start cutting rates. The March quarter will come out. I don't think they'll do anything in April. Maybe a 0.25 basis points, 25 basis point cut, just to kind of stimulate the psychology of human beings. And by the way, Australians right now are record low in terms of consumer sentiment. We're at the same levels we were during the GFC. So people are stressed out there. People are doing it really tough. People are really on the breadline. They're really watching every penny. It's just one of those realities of life. But really, what the biggest thing is that we really have to wait till the June quarter finishes and the numbers come out in July. And if we got good numbers this year, in August, September, the RBA might start cutting rates, and so will the banks follow. If you look at the breakdown of what's contributing to inflation, it's a number of things, but goods especially, like goods, selected goods because of fuel. Whenever you have a war overseas, especially Ukraine and Russia war and different wars, oil goes up, fuel goes up. And to get something to the supermarket, there's a great component that is made up of petrol and fuel. Services are the same. There's a lot of services where you have to just pay more. Trucking, everything that has to do with moving goods to and from an area, or if you're reliant on machinery, you're paying more for fuel, more for electricity, therefore you're going to charge more for your services, therefore inflation goes up. That's the reality. And you can see that rentals also boomed as well after COVID, in Melbourne, especially in the Bayside area where you can get to a property or the beach within 3 to 5 kilometres. People pay the premium for properties and townhouses, especially brand new townhouses. And I'm talking about Albert Park, Middle Park, Port Melbourne, St Kilda West, Elwood, Brighton East, Brighton, Hampton, Sandringham, Blackrock, right down to Balmoral. In some areas, townhouses and rents went up 30% in 12 months, even 40%. It was completely unprecedented. So if you bought just after COVID, you would have cleaned up in rental. Now the rental market is down, and it's consolidating. So now if you buy something, you're paying $200,000 more than 2 years ago, plus your rental yield will be 3.5%, 3.7%. If you bought something 2 years ago, when I was telling people to buy, which was the bottom of the market, you can watch my previous YouTube videos, you would have made $200,000 on average, and you would have made your rental yield would have been 5.5, even 6% on some of these townhouses. Always remember there's an inverse relation between capital growth and rental yields. So what I mean by that is if rental yields shoot up, usually, so let's do simple maths. You've got a $500,000 property, and you're getting a rental yield of 25,000. Right, which is a really good percentage, right? So you're getting 5% rental yield. Now let's say that property shoots up to $1 million over a period of time, and your rentals are locked in because they usually have a lease. Let's say you did a lease for 5 years because you were silly. Well, if the property shoots up to $1 million and you're getting 25,000 rental per year, that means your rental yield is 2.5%. So the higher the capital growth, the lower the rental yield as a percentage of the value of the property. There's an inverse relationship between rental yields and capital growth. And what people don't realize is that sometimes the rental cycle and the growth cycle are out of sync with each other, and they miss each other by 3 or 4 years. So this is why it's silly when people say to me, I want to buy cash flow positive properties. Well, if you bought them 3 years ago, they would have been cash flow neutral or positive right now. The longer you wait, the more rental you're going to get. Assuming your loan is the same, your rents will keep going up, and eventually it probably becomes cash flow neutral and positive. Right now, if you buy a property today in Melbourne, in 25, it'll take 7 to 9 years for that property to become cash flow neutral because you've missed the last peak of the rental cycle. So the thing about rental yields and cycles, the timing of that, impossible. You'll never get it right. It's kind of irrelevant. Now, interest rates are governed and controlled by the Reserve Bank of Australia, and they're very vocal now about the reasoning and the decisions they're making. So we're getting a lot of information, including Q&A from the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, which is very unusual because normally we didn't have this amount of detail. A lot of times if you read between the lines, they actually tell you they don't know what's going to happen. They just wait for data and then they make the decisions. And the biggest thing is they need to keep inflation low. But they're having a crystal balls. Like people think these are mythical creatures that know exactly what's happening in the future. They don't. They don't know anything. There's so many moving parts that affect inflation. No one can grasp them all. And a lot of economists are very one-dimensional. They only know one part of the economy or one part of monetary policy or fiscal policy that can impact. inflation. But there's other parts that are beyond their education they're not accounting for. And that's why a lot of economists get things wrong. To me, it's not that important to get it right. This is the thing I want to do. The biggest point I want to make in this video, it doesn't really make a difference because in the context of wealth creation, interest rates will go up and down. So it doesn't make a difference between whether you're paying, 0.1%, half a percent, whatever it is, 3%, 5%, 7%. Over the last 50 years, the average interest rate has been 7% in Australia. And people have made killing and made money. See, property is all about capital growth. The rental yield and the interest rates are just there to work out your cash flow, which I'm about to show you what that means in real terms. I'm going to show you a real example of a property. But you can see that definitely we went through the roof. We're from 22, we went up to, from virtually 0.1%, we went to 4.35% November 24, which is the highest we've been for a while. We've been higher than that, in the 90s. We've had interest rates go up to 15%. But anyway, that was then, this is now. And you can see that in terms of the targeted range, we're kind of hovering, up and down from that range. It was kind of on track between 2014 and kind of, 2016 and kind of 18, then it started to be impacted. But really, we had a massive inflation spike. Labor got involved in just spending money, on infrastructure projects. The best way to increase inflation is to have major projects funded by Labor, like the Bruce Highway, $7.2 billion. That's going to be inflationary. Or giving money to people. Here's a bunch of cash, go spend it. What do you think that's going to do? I mean, that's going to be inflationary. No wonder we've got inflation, number one, because every policy that Labor has implemented has been an inflationary policy. In fact, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has told the Labor government, stop spending money and stop propping up inflation. So on one hand, they're apologising, blaming the previous government while we're here, but with the other hand, they're spending money and creating more inflationary problems. It's craziness. The four major banks predict rate cuts in the future, but I can tell you now, most of the time they're wrong, and they're economists that make hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in income, some of them in the millions. I'm never getting anything right. 9 out of 10 times the banks have been wrong historically. So whatever they say, in fact, if you do the opposite, you've probably got a better chance of getting it right. But let's go through the information anyway, right? They're out there. They're making a lot of money. So NAB reckons there's going to be 5 number of cuts starting in May. The average mortgage will be $441 better off. CBA, 4 cuts. Why not? In February, the average mortgage will be $358 better off. Westpac 4, starting in May, $357. And ANZ, the most conservative and biggest bank, only 2 cuts from February, $182 better off in your mortgage. And this is the average principal and P&I repayments on the average loan of 6.33%. Rate cuts assume 0.25% basis points per cut. So look, from a consensus perspective, we're all on the same page. My gut feeling is we're going to be waiting till September, October before we see significant cuts. I think the RBA wants to see 2 quarters of inflation within that 2%, 3% range before they feel comfortable signaling that the market is stable enough to absorb interest rate cuts, because the danger is that inflation is going to go back up and then all the hard work has been undone. So that's the reality of that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see some cuts. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if nothing happens this year. We might have a change of government at the federal level, but we might have a government that creates more inflationary pressure. There could be more things happening that we're not even thinking of right now, and we might have a whole year where everything's on hold. What does all this mean? Because to say, the reality is the difference between rich people and poor people, and when I say poor, I don't mean people that are broke. I'm talking about people that are asset poor. So you could be middle upper class, making a lot of money, but all you do is you burn through your money. You're only as wealthy as the assets that you control that passively give you income. So my definition of wealth and poor is very different from just bank balances. But the difference between the psychology of the rich and the psychology of the poor is the rich know how to ask different questions than poor people. A lot of poor people make more, they spend more time researching a holiday to Bali than researching investment property and crunching numbers. So let me just show you a quick example of what this really translates to you as an investor. This is especially important for people that are starting out investing for the first time. Now, I'm going to get into some numbers. So some of you have to watch this a couple of times. And I'm not just saying that it's hard mathematics, but there's a lot of jargon. And if you're not in the industry, like any industry, it's a little bit hard to listen to for the first time that you're hearing this. But this is where the money is, guys. This is everything. So I'm going to give you a real example of a property around the $1 million mark. And I've chosen 995. I couldn't find anything for exactly $1 million. Can you imagine? So I found the property for 995,000, and I'm going to do a comparison in cash flow. It's a real property. I'll show you the property. It's a property one of my clients has purchased at 3.5% interest only, 6.5 and 7.5. Now, some of you are getting 7.3, 7.5 now. Some of you are getting 6.5, 7, 6.1. I've seen, depending on your bank, lender, and your profession. If you're a specialist and you're medical, you get a discount. If you're missed a few payments, if your credit file's low, you might have to get a higher rate, or you're going to a second-tier lender. Now, this project is actually settling. It's getting valued this week and next week. It's going to settle in about a month. It's 28 Torbrook Avenue in Heidelberg West. And I've just chosen it randomly just because it's nearly $1 million and it's nearly settled, so I've got all the data. So it's not available for sale. Once again, I source these properties all day long for my clients. So there's 4 townhouses there, and I've chosen number 4, which is because I want to use a real example. I don't want to talk hypotheticals. I want to show you a real example. What does it mean to an investor when interest rates go down? In real terms, is it important? Should you, and then from that perspective, should you be in the market or not in the market? So ground floor, 112 square meters, first floor, 70 square meters. It's a nice size 4-bedroom townhouse. You have ground floor, double garage, tandem. Then you've got open plan living. You've got a bedroom with an ensuite. You've got a linen cabinet, and you've got a laundry, a walk-through laundry. And then you've got a nice private courtyard, which is 79.2 square meters. Upstairs, you've got 3 bedrooms with 2 en-suites. So a very nice property at the rear, so it's quiet. You've got a nice bit of land. You've got bifold doors. You can open up, have a bit of a party or a barbecue. Have 3 friends over, but it's not high maintenance either. It's a property that's sold, so $995,000. Very well designed. It's over-engineered, and architecturally it's stunning, because I sell properties at 1.7 to 2 million, like in Heidelberg, Ivanhoe, Carnegie, that are the same specs as this property, and this is under $1 million. So Heidelberg West, Heidelberg Heights, great areas, Belfield. I'm focusing very heavily on those suburbs now. We're around the $1 million mark. And if you want to spend $2 million, Baldwin North, those areas like Ivanhoe, Eaglemont, etc. You can see the level of fixtures and fittings is mid-spec, so you can have, this is not builder's range. You have 900 mil Fisher and Paykel appliances. You've got taps that are, copper powder coated. You've got even this sink here, for example, this bathtub. You can see it's not entry level. This is mid-spec properties that look quite amazing at the end. Now let's do the numbers. This is not about the property itself. I want to show you the numbers. The first example is I'm doing the property at 7.5% interest only. So property valued is 995,000. We're doing 8% capital growth per year, which is just below. Those properties go up around 9% per year consistently. They go up by 100 grand for the last 3 years, pretty much consistently. Conveyancing costs, $2,500. Stamp duty, $54,725. I'm not assuming any discounts on stamp duty. I'm assuming you just paid the full stamp duty concessions. Obviously, in Victoria now, if you buy a property off the plane, you get full stamp duty concessions. So this would be around $15,000. Transfer title, $2,530. So you're paying $59,655 in purchase costs. This particular person borrowed 90%. So they pay 1.64% LMI, which is $15,000. So the loan cost was $16,884. So in terms of securing the property, in terms of cash outlay, they paid $99,500 deposit, which is cash, and then closing costs of $59,655, which is $159,155. Now, if you're getting the equity release from your home, that component of your deposit and closing costs, which is that $160,000, there'll be interest on that as well, and they'll be tax deductible. But in this example, I'm keeping it super simple. So 10% cash deposit, 90% lend, because it's not about today about how to manage cash flow. It's about implications of interest rates. I want to keep it super simple. Interest only 7.5%. So you have a loan of $912,384. Loan cost can be written over 5 years, which is $16,884 over 5 years. Monthly repayments $5,702. Annual repayment $68,429. These 4 bedders are renting at $850 a week right now. They're 800 meters from the Austin Hospital, so you're getting a lot of nurses, doctors actually leasing these properties. Well, there's other couples as well. There's other people in the area that are not medical, but there's a lot of medical people that are trying to find good rentals around the Austin Hospital. Potential rent value is $44,200 per year. Vacancy rate below 2%. It's actually 0.62. So rent is $43,316 per year. Now, these are your hard costs associated with the property. You've got 2 types of expenses with the property. You've got your real expenses, where you're paying for cash, and then you've got your depreciation and theoretical expenses. And the ATO doesn't really differentiate between the two. So you've got, obviously, the biggest expense is interest repayments on the property, $68,429 per year. Then you got your property management fee, $3,335 per year. Letting fee, $850. That's to advertise the property, do the paragraph, the photos, all that kind of stuff. Council rates, $1,450. Landlord insurance for Aon, $315. That actually covers you for accidental and malicious damage to the property. So if the tenants, burn down the kitchen, or they drop an iron, hot iron on the carpet, you get a new carpet. Owners Corporation, $2,000. It hasn't been established yet, but that covers your building insurance and gardening and public liability insurance, because there's a common driveway on the side. You've got to insure the common driveway, get public liability insurance, a sinking fund so you can repair it, gardening, and the public lighting in the bin area and the letterbox area. Land tax $900, water connection $850. So you're paying $9,700 in real expenses per year, which is 21.95% of the rent percentage, which is good. They should be between 20 and 25%, which means your net yield is 3.38, your gross is around 4.5. So you're losing around 1% in expenses, which is just normal. Property is $995. The construction cost is $497,500. So you depreciate that building over 2.5%. You get $12,438 depreciation over 40 years, which is huge. And then your fixtures and fittings are $25,000. So that's your joinery, carpets, hot water system, air conditioning heads, your whole kitchen, your oven, all that kind of stuff. So you get $4,271, diminishing value, meaning that you're getting more up front because your rental's going up and you're claiming more, and then gradually over time it diminishes as your rental builds up, because you want the cash flow to always be the best in your favor. So the least amount of money to hold onto the property. And then loan costs can be written over 5 years, $16,884. Now, I know this is a lot of numbers, but stay with me. There's a really big important point at the end that I think you'll be blown away by if you haven't thought about it. So these are your expenses, cash and non-cash deductions for the property. You have $68,428 in interest, expenses, which is council rates, all that kind of stuff. $9,700 a year. Depreciation on the building, $12,400. Depreciation on fixtures and fittings, $4,200, and loan costs. So $98,214. Tax deductions in the first 12 months, crazy. Nearly $100,000. Current income, the client that bought this was just on 150, just over, but I rounded it up to 150. The rental income gets added to your normal job income. So 150 plus 43,316. Your rental income goes up to 193,316. The rent deductions are 98,000. So new taxable income drops on paper to 95,102. The original tax that he was paying on 150 is 45,997. I have a lot of clients, and I'm just guesstimating completely, but I reckon 60, 70 clients out of the 630 clients that are active that are on that 150, 160 mark. And guys, if you're listening to this video right now, if you're working in IT, engineering, you're on 150, 160, 180, you're paying 50 grand a year in tax. Like, you're a bloody idiot. You should get into property and just get rid of your tax. So in this instance, and I'm just being kind, but I'm just talking to you like I was talking to a friend, because why would you pay all this tax? Now, there's nothing wrong with paying a little bit of tax because you're contributing to roads, the Yes campaign, the Albanese Yes campaign, which is $400 $90 million. So feel good about it. But, a third of your income in tax, that's a bit excessive. Now, this property here, the current tax is $45,997 on 150. The new income is $95,102. So the current new tax is $23,660. So the person is saving $22,337 in tax. So his tax bill got cut in half. So 2 properties for this client, and they're paying no tax legally. Just think about that for a second. 2 investment properties, no tax legally. Crazy. Why aren't you doing it? I don't know. Now, this is what I want to show you. So in this property, you have the property value at 8% growth over 20 years. You've got the equity position that's building up at 8%. You've got the rental that's going up just above inflation. So it's inflation plus whatever the growth is of that suburb. You've got deductions that are just solid, and then they're diminishing and they go up a little bit. You got the pre-tax cash flow, then you got your tax credits, how much the ATO will give you, and then you got your net figure that you pay out of pocket. So in this property, it's $34,813 negative per year, because you get a check from the ATO of $22,337. Now you can get that check at the end of the year, or you can do what's called an income tax withholding variation form and get it every pay cycle. So if you're on like fortnightly, you get about $1,000 in your pocket, $900 in your pocket extra. So the net figure for this property at 7.5% is negative $12,476 per year in the first year. So to get a $995,000 property, $1 million property at 7.5% interest costs you $240 per week, or $12,476 per year. Is that good? Is that bad? Right? Some people say 12.5 grand is too much. Now, remember, if you've got a house, you don't have to pay these 12.5 out of your income that you're earning. You can just pay out of the equity of your house. So if you add up all these numbers, so you got to understand what the psychology of investing is. So 12,000, 11,000, 10,000. If you add up all these figures together, so you got 12, 20, 23, 30, 40, 50, 60, say 70,000. That's how much you have to hold this property to become cash flow positive in year 10 by $1,500, right? So in year 9, it's still negative. Now, let's say this is, and I think the answer is, I've worked it out here, it's actually $68,930, right? So the question is this. $70,000. If I was asking you, give me $70,000, not spread over 9 years, in year 1, and in year 10, the asset's worth $1.2 million. So you've made an average of $120,000 per year in growth. Would you give me $70,000 in year 1? And I'll give you $120,000 every year for 10 years. Is that a good deal? Are you serious? More than 100% return every year on doing nothing, just leveraging equity? So investors don't think about the shortfall, because you can capitalize the shortfall. You can get a credit card to pay the $12,500. Not that I'm recommending it. You can use equity. The equity in your floorboards is locked up in your house. Or you can just use it from your income as a last scenario. Like if you can't afford $250 a week, don't get the property. But if you can, this is how you start. And remember, this is a worst case scenario. This is assuming 7.5% for 10 years. Obviously, we're going to have rate cuts in the future. So this red section will be diminished significantly. It's probably going to be cash flow neutral or positive in year 5 or 6. But it's still 12.5 grand, $240 a week. Now, I understand for some of you that's a lot of money. And if it's going to put stress on you, don't invest in property, right? So if you're a family with 3 kids, and I know how expensive it is to raise children, they just consume so much money, especially for schooling and etc. If it's going to be stressful, then don't buy it. But if you're a single guy in IT, living somewhere with parents or renting an apartment, and you can save $250 a week, there's no other better investment vehicle in the world, maybe crypto, where you can put away $250 per week, and then make $120,000 per year. It's virtually no volatility in property, guys, because with crypto can go to zero. Remember OneCoin? That's gone. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, like, put it in the context of what you're earning. Now let's have a look at the same scenario. Interest rate 6.5, 995. So everything's the same. $995,000 purchase, 6.5% interest only, $138 a week, or $7,184. So you're spending much less now. Same amount. In year 10, you've made $1.2 million, which is $120,000 per year. right? So so as long as you can come up with $7,000 for the year. Now, if I was desperate to get started, I would go on Uber and do deliveries on weekends, make $7,000 a year just to get the first property if I couldn't afford $138 a week. So you got to put it into perspective like this. If you're young, so if you've got a family and mortgages and kids, I understand. No problem. I get it. It's tough. Don't invest. If you're a single person, seriously, and you can't afford $140 a week, get a second job to make $140 a week after tax, which is not a lot of hours. I'm not telling you to work 30 more hours here, okay? And then just put it into your property, because not only will you make 120,000 extra a year, just think about how many times you can leverage that property over 10 years to get equity to buy more property. It's always the opportunity cost of not buying property that's holding you guys back. And this is the problem. And if the property is cash flow 3.5% interest only, it's cash flow positive by $170 a week, and it makes you $8,859 in the first year. Now, people say, I want cash flow positive, cash flow negative. Guys, property's never been about rental. It's been about equity. It's always about the growth, not cash flow per week, per month. So you're just buying time in the market. Yes, it's lovely to get a growth property that's cash flow positive. I understand. It's very difficult to get it. And usually you can't time the market perfectly to execute that. You might wait for this magic moment and you're going to get there and you can't borrow money or there's nothing good to buy. So the reality is this, guys. If you're comparing a property of interest rates between 3.5, which we had a few years ago, 6.5, which is now, 7.5, which we have now as well for people that don't fit the first tier lenders, then your cost is $250 a week or $12,476 per year. If you can afford to spend $250 a week and save that, buy the property. Okay, because you'll make $120,000 by the end of the year. 2 years you got a deposit for your next property, right? You got $240,000. If it's 6.5% interest only, right? $138 a week, $7,000. If you can afford that, buy it. Then if it's cash flow positive, well, it's putting money in your pocket. There should be no excuse. But the amount of people that don't buy a property when they're cash flow positive or neutral. So if you're one of these people that's going to wait, why didn't you buy properties when the interest rates when the bank swap rate was 0.1% and interest rates were 3.5%? We were doing 2.997, 2.97, sorry, 3%, 3.15. Why didn't you buy property? Oh, because the market was going to crash and Russia was going to invade Ukraine. There's always going to be something. Do you know what I mean? So the thing about investing is, guys, psychology of investing, which is what I want to show you, is putting things into context. What does it really mean on the bottom dollar for me as an investor? And it really means nothing. Interest rates are not important because interest rates are just something that you pay on something. And as long as you can afford to capitalize that or pay that and buy time in the market, you're going to win the game. So, people go, 7% is ridiculous, 9% is ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous. 10% is not ridiculous. As long as it doesn't come out of your pocket and your lifestyle's unaffected and you can capitalize 10%, buy properties at 10%. It doesn't make a difference. It's just a number. Don't be scared of numbers. And that's why financial literacy is so important. Without financial literacy, guys, you're going to be just frozen and paralyzed with uncertainty. And this is why some doesn't matter how smart you are. I know most engineering people never invest in property. I know hundreds of engineering people that are making $200,000 a year and they're just happy paying $80,000 in tax. I have surgeons, doctors, dentists, conservative, paying $200 in tax a year, $250, right? And they're happy paying tax. And God bless their little souls, they're contributing to the economy. But what I'm saying is, without financial literacy, without reading books like this and Robert Kiyosaki, and getting ahead, and this is based on the Australian system, based on Australian numbers, you'll never be in a position where you can make an educated decision. You want to make an educated decision, but you haven't got the tools. Until you have the tools, until you can break down everything in the example that I gave you just now, you're not going to be able to make smart decisions. Because ultimately, it's not about that, guys. It's not about it's costing me $12,500. It's about the fact that it's an equity growth. And in year 10, I've made 1.2 million, which is 120,000 per year. So if I ask you to give me $68,930 today, so you prepay the whole 9 years, would you take it out of your equity if you made 1.2 million guaranteed in 10 years' time, which is 120,000 in the first year and then every year thereafter? Of course you would. There's nothing to think about. That's how you have to translate interest rates up, down, and sideways movements. Not in the context of, oh my God, it's 7.5, it's too high. Too high compared to what? It's a high number compared to 5, low number compared to 10. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? That's what it is. So just to summarize, combined negative cash flow year 1 to 9, 68,900 before it's cash flow neutral. And look, some properties become cash flow neutral in year 7, some in year 11. It depends on the suburb and the income demographics of the suburb. The thing is, you make 1.236 million in 10 years, which is 123,000 per year. So the simple question is, would you give me 70,000? I'll give you 123,000 every year for the next 10 years. Yes. Is that a good investment? I don't know. Can you get higher investments with lower risk? But the most important thing is the leverage, because it's not just about that one property. It's how many times can you leapfrog over 10 years out of that one property, get the equity, and then go again and again and again. And this is why people say, oh, how did that person get to 5 properties? Well, they started with one. They probably bought it when it was the wrong time to buy, but they chose it based on the fundamentals. Never compromise quality. It's always quality over quantity and timing. Stick to the fundamentals and forget about timing. Don't wait to buy real estate and wait. That's what I say. And remember, in 24, from RAIV, even though it was all doom and gloom, and Melbourne did negative 0.4%, went down by 4% for the whole year, and this is December to December, and January to January was negative 3%. Melbourne has 321 suburbs and 197 house and land estates. There's no such thing as a Melbourne common market. So even within that decline, during 24, RAIV revealed that areas like Princess Hill went up by 24.5% in median price. North Warrandyte, 23%, Park Orchards, 20%, Dippendee, 20%, Brooklyn, 17.8, Strathmore, 15.3, Watsonia, 14.9, Portsea, 14.5, Diamond Creek, 14, and Launching Place, 13.2. This is December quarter mean prices averaged over the year. So don't forget that even though it's doom and gloom, when you're combining the data for all of Melbourne, it can seem negative, but you got to cherry pick your moments. You got to pick those suburbs, and within those suburbs, specific properties. Because even in Princess Hill, you have properties facing power lines, major intersections, petrol stations. They won't do well compared to ones that are in private courts in a tree-lined street next to a school that no one wants to go to. So remember, guys, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. Warren Buffett, do the exact opposite of what everyone's doing and you win the game. People always get things wrong. Politicians have no idea. They just run the economy into the ground, especially Labor Party. Economists, they broke with no friends, alone in a cubicle somewhere in Monash University. They're all broke, guys. And bankers, well, they just get big salaries, but most of the time they get things wrong. So it's hard to know who to listen to and how to get good information. I remember what happens just with the gyms all around the world. I went to the gym on the 2nd of January because you can't join the gym on the 1st of January because it's a public holiday. So I was there. It was chock-a-block. I went at night. But anyway, December, it's dead, right? January, chock-a-block. But it's February, it's the professionals, the powerlifters, the hardcore trainers that make it through. It's not about timing the market, it's timing the market. It's just consistency over time and making smart, educated decisions, getting financially literate, buying books like this and reading it. Guys, you could read this book. If you do a chapter a week, you can get through this book very quickly. There's, I think, 30, you'll get through it in 6 months. And that's not a lot of time. I mean, it's 28 chapters, right? 6 months you can read this book, one chapter, per week. The difference between you today and a year from now is the people that you meet and the books that you read. And if you're not going to meet any more new people, read the books like this, Robert Kiyosaki, get the psychology right, understand the context, not the contents, the context of what's happening, and then make educated decisions. So where are we in the property cycle right now? Well, the market goes up, down, and sideways. If you read one thing per month, is definitely subscribe to the Heron Todd White Monthly in Review newsletter. They're the ones that create the market. There's Melbourne now going to a decline, and we're very quickly going to go back up to rising market. Yes, the best time to buy property is always when we're at 9 o'clock, but you can't always get there. That is the best time to buy properties. That was last year and 3 years ago. But But I'll tell you now, this is what happens. Educated investors do the counter opposite to what people do. They usually refinance their properties at the peak, lock in their equity, do nothing when the market's going down, or watch the market for really good properties that are fundamentally sound and snap them up. At the bottom, they increase the rentals, they get pre-approved, and when the market recovers, goes from 6 to 9, they buy aggressively, and then they wait for the craziness between 9 and 12, where properties do double-digit growth. It's always nice to buy at the bottom. I understand. It's nice to get good things at a discount, whether it's watches, cars, but that's not a recipe for success. The recipe for success, guys, is consistency over a long period of time. And sometimes you overpay for an asset, sometimes you underpay, sometimes you pay at market. But I tell you what, like Warren Buffett says, I would rather overpay for a good asset than underpay for a bad one. Because a dud property is a dud property, and a growth property is always a good property to buy. So don't wait for these magic moments when the market's at the lowest point. Buy whenever you can buy, because it's always hard to buy, and there's other factors that might contribute that will stop you from buying when it's the best time to buy. You could maybe change jobs. The company liquidated stocks and it's down, and your position's impacted, and you can't get new clients, or there's negative sentiment in the economy, or there's black swan events happening, there's an invasion somewhere, or they're on the brink of war, brink of this, brink of that. So you might wait for this magic moment in the property market to be at the bottom, and there's other events happening beyond your control that are making you sit back and wait rather than take action. That's why my number one, secret of success is I just buy whenever I can buy, but I never compromise on quality. I never compromise on the asset itself. That's where you can make a big mistake. And once again, if you look at the median price change, top 10 growth suburbs in Melbourne last year, which were pretty much the eastern suburbs because the lifestyle areas, Ivanhoe went up by 17%, Diamond Creek 13.2, Coburg North 12.8, Parkdale 12.4, Ringwood North 11.6, Bendigo, always a fan of Bendigo, 11.4%, Newtown in Geelong 10.8, Hallam 10.4, Greensborough 9.4, Eltham 9.2, and Melbourne went negative, 4% for the same period of time. So different markets, understanding the fragmentation of the markets and picking the properties in the right area is everything. Remember, properties will go up to 6.3 million in median price in 20 years, according to Aussie Home Loans CoreLogic. They predict the average price will hit 5.8 million in Melbourne, 2.9 million in Canberra, 2.5 in Perth, 2.3 million in Brisbane, and the biggest increase in Melbourne. Sydney median price from 1 million, 1.3 will be 6.3 million in 2043. Perth 2.4, Melbourne 5.8 from 880. We're at the lowest point now, guys. We're even going to go lower potentially, and potentially this year could be written off. For all I know, nothing will happen in 25. It just could go sideways. Who cares? So what? What does it mean in the grand scheme of things? It's just another year of my life. It doesn't mean anything. I've got my properties. I'm just going to keep refinancing and building my wealth. What are you going to do? That's the question, because this is going to happen with or without you. You're either going to be part of this, or you'll be watching and going, I can't believe the properties went up again. Jesus Christ, it's just like, when is it going to stop? It's not going to stop. It will stop when Labor stops bringing people into the country. That's when it's going to stop. They just brought 1 million people into the country, all skilled into jobs. Melbourne's going to go to 5.824 from 880,000. That's a huge increase. It's going to go up so fast and so quickly, people will be shocked. And the question is, are you going to be part of it? That's the question you've got to be asking yourself. If you don't believe it, it just means that you're not educated enough to understand that it's going to happen. Read more books, go to more events, speak to more successful people. 6.3 million for Australia in 20 years. Crazy. This is what's been happening since 1880, guys. Yes, there is short-term volatility, no problem. But every time this happens, and we go down from here to there, the sky's falling. But look at the trend line, guys. And remember the saying, let the trend be your friend. Never bet against the market long-term, right? So long-term with houses, you can't lose in Australia unless population stops growing and there's going to be a lower influx of people. I'll tell you now, a friend of mine asked me a few years ago, would you ever sell your property portfolio? And I said, yes, if migration stopped. If we completely stop migration to the country, I would liquidate all my properties the next day because the natural birth rate is so low, it wouldn't be sustainable. And I would stick all my assets into shares, gold, annuities, bonds, etc. I'll diversify it. But because we have so many people coming in and we're not building enough houses, we can't possibly build enough houses. 1.2 million houses that Labor wants to build is Looney Tunes. It's just crazy. It's not going to happen. We're going to have an inefficiency in the market, supply and demand, and property is going to go up. And they go up more in different areas, which is what a lot of my videos are all about. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Interested in learning more? Well, there's a couple of things. I'm running these events from time to time in Melbourne. I'm doing less and less now because I'm just working one-on-one with so many clients. So I might do a couple this year, and that's it, pretty much. We're just so busy now. Stephen and myself and Cameron are getting more busier because we have so many clients that we're working with one-on-one. But if you want to attend, check it out, Real Estate Fast Track Weekend, where we go through 2 days of education, how to build and structure a large property portfolio from scratch. You get a hard copy of my book as well. Tickets only $47. Lunch is included in both days, and you get a hard copy of my book, which is like a manual for the 2-day event. So by all means, feel free to attend, check out the dates by going to their website. Also, if you scroll down below, you can access a recording of this event from a few years ago, which we give you for free. It's still 80% current. The only 20% that's changed is obviously the market has moved. So you got to watch my YouTube videos about updates on what's happening in the market. It's free. It's $497. All you do is literally just put in your email and you can access those videos immediately. There's nothing to buy or there's no upsell. It's 10 hours of video, 265-page manual. If you want to work with me one-on-one, I have limited places available. I am getting really busy now, and I apologize for taking a few weeks to get back to, or to book people out a few weeks out. Some people want to see me immediately, but I'm just booked out with existing clients because they just keep buying more and more properties, which is good, because it means the system is working. But if you want to sit down with me on Zoom for 60 minutes, by all means, just send me an email. Where I'll take an idea into a plan and I'll give you an action plan. I'll work out where you are, where you want to be, and I give you a blueprint of how to move from A to B. Remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Your portfolio is not going to magically manifest itself. You got to make it happen. You got to put in the hard work. And it's hard work. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of stuff you got to do. Get loan applications through, settlements, rentals, insurance. It's not easy. It's hours, but it's very satisfying, and the results are amazing, and they will amaze you. You can change your life. Most people have a journey of building wealth from A to B where they waste a lot of time and money. And remember, guys, you can always get more money. You can't get more time. Once your time runs out, there is no more time. What I do, because I'm 48, I've been doing this now for 30 years, I take you from A to B with the shortest path possible with maximum efficiency. So you get an hour free strategy, no strings attached. You get an introduction to your whole team if you want a good mortgage broker, lawyer, accountant, financial planner. I know the best people in Melbourne, so you can work with them one-on-one. You work your way with a real strategy. And people have bought properties in other states. You don't have to buy in Melbourne. You can buy anywhere. It works as well as in Melbourne as it works in Brisbane, in New South Wales, everywhere. The qualifying criteria is that you need to make at least $95,000 as an individual person, or you've got to be pre-approved for $700,000 purchase. I don't have anything under $700 in Melbourne. I got $695, but not $700. Nothing under $695. If you're a couple, you need to be on $140 roughly combined income. So you can borrow $700,000, and you have to have income savings or equity of $112,000 available in cash. If you qualify, send me an email, conrad@investorsprime.com.au, and I'll reply personally. I'll book you in. We can have a chat over Zoom. I can go through your situation, give you some honest feedback, and give you some sense of direction, answer your questions, and go from there. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Konrad Bobilak. I'll see you on the inside.